right into this explainer. If you follow Formula One, you already know we're right in the middle of the absolute biggest regulation reset in the sport's entire 76-year history. We're talking a massive combined chassis and engine overhaul. The 2026 regulations didn't just, tweak the formula, they literally ripped it up and started entirely from scratch, totally redesigning the hardware and the fundamental sporting philosophy.
Now, think about this for a second. For years, the real race was often won hidden away in the wind tunnel, right? Buried in incredibly complex aerodynamic data that even the most hardcore fans couldn't always decipher. Well, 2026 completely changes the game. That hidden aero data, it's gone. It's been replaced by highly visible, real-time data analysis that unfolds directly on our screens. So the big question is, what actually happens when F1 forces the driver to actively manage their car's tactical state on live television? Here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the biggest reset, nimble cars, the 50-50 split, new driver modes, new teams, and finally, accountability. Okay, kicking things off with part 1, nimble cars and active aero. Looking at the actual numbers behind this new philosophy, the FIA finally recognized what we've all been saying. The cars had just gotten way too big. So for 2026, they chopped 200 millimeters off the wheelbase, narrowed the cars by 100 millimeters, and, absolutely crucially, shaved off 30 kilograms of weight. Add in narrower tires and a smaller floor, and the goal is to make these cars visually distinct and way more agile through the corners, like genuinely nimble. But a smaller car is really only half the story here. The other half? Active aerodynamics. Drivers aren't just relying on a static setup anymore. Instead, the front and rear wings dynamically adjust depending on where they are on the track. You've got Z mode for the corners. That's your default, high downforce, grippy state. And then there's X mode for the straights, where the flaps flatten out to shed all that drag. The driver is manually activating these modes. They are literally shape-shifting the car's aero during the lap. And the wild part is, the result of all this, we're talking about a massive 55% reduction in overall drag compared to the 2025 cars, along with a 30% drop in downforce. These things slice through the air in a totally different way now. Moving on to part 2, the 50-50 power split. So F1 is keeping the 1.6-liter V6 turbo, but the output balance completely flipped. We've officially moved out of the era where electrical power was just, roughly 20% of the output. In 2026, it is essentially a perfect 50-50 split between the internal combustion engine and the electrical battery system. The engine isn't the sole primary mover anymore. It's an equal partner. To pull this off, the FIA massively scaled up the MGU-K, the Kinetic Energy Recovery System. It essentially tripled in power output, jumping from 120 kilowatts to an absolutely staggering 350 kilowatts. That means electrical energy deployment is fundamentally what dictates lap time now. And behind the scenes, the pit wall's data analysis systems have had to totally evolve to monitor this massive 350 kilowatt deployment in real time, feeding constant tactical adjustments back to the driver through the communication systems. Now, while the kinetic system grew, the complex heat recovery system, the MGU-H, is gone entirely, removed. The MGU-H was a total marvel of engineering, sure, but it was so incredibly complex that it basically scared away new engine builders. Dropping it slashed development costs and leveled the playing field, making the sport super attractive for new manufacturers to jump in. Oh, and the internal combustion engine, it's now running on 100% sustainable net zero carbon drop-in fuels. It's a huge push for road-relevant efficiency. Let's hit part 3, boost, overtake, and recharge. To really grasp these modes, we have to talk about F1's communication system. Team radio and data telemetry were just getting far too complex for TV broadcasts, so the FIA standardized the language. First up is boost mode. This is a constant tactical gamble. It's the manual deployment of harvested electrical energy, and a driver can hit that button literally anywhere on the track. But if you defend too early, you might expose yourself later. Attack without enough energy, and you're a sitting duck. And all the while, engineers on the pit wall are intensely monitoring the telemetry of this gamble, relaying critical data back to the cockpit. Every single button press has immense consequences. Next, we have overtake mode, which officially replaces DRS. You activate this when you're within 1 second of the car ahead, and it gives the driver a sustained 350 kilowatts of electrical power that doesn't taper off at high speeds, plus an extra energy allowance. This right here is where the team's data analysis process truly shines. Teams can track exactly how much of their rival's 350 kilowatt allowance has been burned. It turns overtakes into this highly calculated high-speed game of electrical chess. Of course, to use that energy, you gotta gather it. Recharge is the new broadcast term for recovering battery energy to meet the strict 8.5 megajoule per lap limit. Whether it's through automated braking regen, lift and coast, or super clipping at the end of a straight, recharging is now a highly visible skill on the broadcast telemetry. Fans at home are actually looking at the exact same graphic energy analysis that the race engineers on the pit wall use to instruct their drivers over the communication systems. If a driver is harvesting at the wrong phase of the lap, the live data makes it painfully obvious to everyone watching. Which brings us to part 4, new teams enter the fray.
The biggest story here is for sure Cadillac entering as the 11th team, and their survival strategy is actually brilliant. Instead of rushing to build a brand new engine, they opted to play it smart and use Ferrari power units until General Motors brings their own in 2029. This lets them focus entirely on their in-house Mach 26 chassis. And to avoid those tricky data correlation traps in this complex new era, they didn't hire rookies, they brought in seasoned veterans, Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas. They need drivers who can provide clean, actionable feedback over the radio without getting totally overwhelmed by all the new systems.
Then you've got Audi and Red Bull Ford. Audi took over Sauber and entered as a full works team with their very own engine, which means they are facing a very steep learning curve. Contrast that with Red Bull Ford. Going from just chassis builders to in-house engine manufacturers is a massive risk, but their early data analysis has been terrifying for their rivals. Williams driver Carlos Sainz looked at the GPS telemetry from testing and flat out stated that Red Bull's engine speed is a clear advantage and a real gap. But to make sure the grid stays competitive, the FIA introduced something called the ADU system, or Power Unit Performance Balancing. Basically, if a manufacturer's internal combustion engine falls 2% or more behind the benchmark, they get granted development concessions. Ferrari, for instance, is already using this tier-based system to fast-track engine upgrades and close the gap. It's highly political, obviously, but it's an absolutely necessary tool to prevent just one team from running away with the whole era. Finally, part 5, the return of accountability. I absolutely love this quote from Coffee Corner Motorsport because it just hits the nail on the head. When energy deployment is visible, mistakes cannot be hidden. Accountability written into the language of the sport. Because the aerodynamics are active and the energy management is broadcast live, drivers just can't hide behind mysterious tire degradation or invisible aero wash anymore. The data analysis is completely public now. So, if a driver complains over the team radio about a sudden lack of grip, commentators are instantly going to cross-reference that by looking right at the driver's live energy deployment. The excuses, they've literally been stripped away. And we're already seeing this play out super rapidly in the early 2026 season. After Red Bull showed some really serious testing pace in Bahrain, the season officially kicked off in Australia. By Japan, it was incredibly clear that mastering energy management was basically the only path to victory. Meanwhile, over at Mercedes, their 19-year-old star Kimi Antonelli has adapted to this accountable, tactical era incredibly fast, claiming his 3rd straight win in a wild, high-attrition Miami Grand Prix. So, as the rest of the grid scrambles to catch up to Mercedes, I want to leave you with this thought. With the power literally in their hands, visible data on screen for the entire world to analyze, and absolutely no engineering mystery left to hide behind, who do you think will truly master this tactical era of racing first? Is it going to be the seasoned veterans or the new kids on the block?